So far this week, we've talked about the importance of workforce planning. We've talked about talent attraction and what some employers are doing. We also spent some time on employment branding, how it's used to attract and retain, and how it's actually performed. For this last lecture of the week, we'll turn our attention to the selection process. Selection is the process of assessing who will be successful on the job in the organization. It also includes the communication of information to help the job candidate in their decision to, hopefully, accept your offer. To select the best from the pool of candidates, you need to identify the person or people who offer the greatest performance potential. Typical selection steps include completion of a formal application, interviewing, testing, and reference checks. Depending on the job, it might also include a physical exam, and then the final analysis and decision to either hire or reject. The application has long been the traditional first artifact of the selection process. It serves both as a declaration of the applicant's interest in the job, and also the first opportunity for the applicant to sell the organization on his or her skills and experience. An application form documents the applicant's personal history, qualifications, and credentials, and oftentimes requires the addition of a personal resume. Applicants lacking appropriate credentials are typically rejected at this step. In this way, the application form is actually the first screen in this selection process. The second step includes an exchange of information between the job candidate and key members of the organization, and this step involves the initial interview. The interview provides an opportunity to learn more about the candidate and assess knowledge, skills, and experience as described in the application or on the resume. It allows the organization to describe its mission and expectations in more detail, and it allows the employer to sell the organization to the candidate. An important facet of HR's role here is to prepare managers to conduct a thorough and legal interview. Interviewing managers must be knowledgeable of what can and cannot be asked, and how to draw information from candidates, and make sure that all parties know this ahead of time to avoid legal or ethical complications. Beyond the interview, employment testing can further screen applicants by gathering additional job-relevant information. Some common types of employment tests might include an intelligence test, aptitude test, personality test, or a test of interest. The key thing for HR to keep in mind here is that employment tests must be substantiated. They need to make sure that the tests are needed and appropriate for the job, and also that they're carried out ethically. Testing must meet two criteria. They need to be reliable, that is, the selection device needs to be consistent, and it needs to have validity. There should be a demonstrable relationship between a person's score or rating on a selection-affecting test and his or her eventual job performance. There are also some behavioral-oriented employment tests. That might take place in an assessment center that evaluates a person's performance in simulated work situations. It might include work sampling that evaluates a person's performance on actual job tasks, or how their personality or work style might fit in. Another selection process step is the check of references. This includes inquiries into previous employers, academic advisors, co-workers, or other acquaintances regarding the applicant's qualifications, experience, or past work records. This might also include a past criminal background check. This can better inform potential employers about the candidate, and good references can greatly enhance the candidate's credibility. As mentioned, certain jobs might also require a physical exam. As previously stated, this type of test can only be done to ensure that an applicant is physically capable to fulfill specific job requirements. This might also be the stage in which drug testing is conducted, particularly for jobs such as professional driving or operation of heavy equipment. Again, it must be emphasized that all testing must be applicable to the job to avoid any potential ethical concerns or applicant litigation. Finally, after all data is collected and analyzed, the decision to hire or reject a candidate can occur. The best selection decisions involve extensive consultation among multiple parties. Typically, it'll be HR, hiring manager or line managers, and employees who would potentially be colleagues of the applicant. The selection decision should also focus on all aspects of the candidate's capacity to perform the designated job. This should never be taken lightly. As mentioned before, making the wrong hiring decision can be extremely costly. It's incumbent upon HR to make sure that the hiring process is thorough. So, you've interviewed, screened, tested, checked references, and made the job offer to the most appropriate candidate. As critical as the selection process is, how the new employee is welcomed and oriented to the organization is equally important. The onboarding process has become a critical part of the new hire experience. When an employee first begins his job, he should be given the basic information needed to settle into the work quickly and happily. Just like with first impressions, effective onboarding can set the tone of the employment relationship from the get-go. Many techniques are used in onboarding, including formal lectures or seminars, employee handbooks or films, new employee mentors, or even colleague cross-training, to get the new employee up to speed about the company and the job. Onboarding is an important process for both putting a new employee at ease and creating interest in his or her job and the company. Oftentimes, just hearing about the company history, how the company was born, and how it grew and where it's going, can be very motivating to an employee. This is also the time the employee should be provided with basic information about working arrangements, expectations, dress codes if applicable, and where the lunchroom is. All of the basics. It should also be a time to indicate and impart the standards of performance and behavior, the availability of training and facilities, and the introduction to colleagues and coworkers. It's hugely important to make a new employee feel comfortable and socially welcomed, and part of that is giving him or her all the necessary information. HR should do their part to ensure onboarding is successful also. Some HR-focused realms of this process include imparting certain information about benefits, compensation, holidays or time off, retirement information, and so forth. And lastly, onboarding should provide information about the new employee's department. He or she should be brought up to speed quickly as to the functioning style of their new department, how work is distributed and assigned, the working hours, and so forth. Certainly, provide information about the employee's supervisor and the employees that are related to his or her work. Also, the employees who are to report to him or her, if that's the situation. In summary, employers need to spend the time and money on effective onboarding to ensure their new hire, who they so carefully recruited, interviewed, tested, and concluded would be a good fit for the company, is successful as a long-term employee of the organization.